Good morning, UUFC. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. My name is David Sanders, and I'm your worship associate today. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your life journey, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, wherever you were born, whatever language you speak, you are welcome here. Whatever your skin color, your class background, whatever your range of abilities, you are welcome here. We are so glad that you chose our fellowship as your place of worship this morning. We come together for worship in order to slow down and listen for the callings of our hearts, our spirits. We come together for worship so that we can be reminded of our highest aspirations and continue to transform ourselves into our best selves. If you're joining us for the first time this morning, welcome. And if you're joining us online this morning, welcome. After the service, we gather for coffee and social connection in the social room at the opposite end of the hall. Please join us after the service. If you're interested in getting our weekly newsletter so you can get connected to our community, our weekly sharing of joys and concerns, and our collective efforts to support local social justice work, please reach out to the office by the email on our website. Before we begin our worship service, I have a few announcements to share with you. I'd like to welcome Ben as our tech in the back, and thank you so much for doing that. And I forgot to ask you, I'll be needing this a little later. Okay. And if you haven't already done so, please take a few minutes to complete the feedback form on Reverend Christina's ministry on behalf of the transitions team. This would have come to you as an email invitation for a survey or invitation, UUFC invitation. It takes about 5 minutes to complete. I did mine yesterday, very painless, but this is part of Reverend Christina's effort to become fully vested, or I forget the right terminology, but full fellowship as a UUFC, as a Unitarian Universalist minister. So this is part of her journey to, think of it, since this is a Clemson crowd, think of it as the tenure equivalent for a UU minister. So the link was provided on email. It was also provided in the weekly connection. If you have any further questions about the survey or need the link resent to you, please see one of our transition team members, Julia Brongeman and Cindy Lee. There are many other upcoming events that are on the back of your order of service, so please see those announcements on the back. Now I'd like to take a few moments for us to greet our neighbor. Just stand up and greet the person next to you or in the row in front of or behind you, and I'll ring the chimes when we're ready to move into our hymn. Now let us rise in mind, body, or spirit, and please join me in hymn 1021, Lean on Me, and the words will be up on the screen if you prefer to follow it on the screen instead of in the book.
Lean on me.
Moving a little bit more than normal. Okay, all right, back to our normal stuffy UUFC. Here we go. So that song is just a nice prelude to some of the topics that we'll be talking about today. And in our opening words, it's just really one statement that I'd like to share with you from Professor Cornel West. Justice is what love looks like in public. I'll say it again. Justice is what love looks like in public. So today at UUFC, we will explore some of the many ways that we can bring about justice into our world, our communities, with our neighbors. And our guest speaker today is one of my neighbors, Reverend Dr. Gail Baldwin, and I'll provide a more detailed introduction of Reverend Baldwin later in the service. Right now, as we light the chalice, I'd like to read a passage from Reverend Rebecca Savage, "Ignite Us, Radical Love." We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark us in a spirit of humility. May it ignite us in radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is a chalice of audacious hope. This chalice is a chalice that shines a light on our shared past, signaling our intention to listen deeply, to reflect wisely, and to move boldly towards our highest ideals. Now let us share in the reading of this fellowship's affirmation that is printed in your order of service. Together, we gather together in a spirit of love, with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another. Now we have a time for all ages. Karen?
Good morning. Our time for all ages this morning was adapted by Reverend Karen J. Johnston from a story in the prologue of John Lewis's memoir, Walking with the Wind. So this is a true story. It comes to us from John Lewis, a great leader in this nation, who died in July 2020. Many people were sad to lose him and thankful for all he had done to bring about justice in this nation. He had lived a long and full life, asking of himself and asking of all of us to show up for justice, to do what we can, and just a little bit more to make sure there's more fairness in our country. Now, John Lewis grew up in a large family, and he would spend time with his aunts and uncles, siblings and cousins, and there were many children in the neighborhood, and they would all play together. This is pre-COVID times, so. Mr. Lewis tells about a time when he was playing outside his Aunt Seneva's house with about 14 other children. That's quite a crowd. When a big storm arrived. A kind of storm that made him very afraid. I'm going to tell the story from his perspective, so it's like he is talking. So when I say I, it really means Mr. John Lewis. Aunt Seneva was the only adult around, and as the sky blackened and the wind grew stronger, she herded us all inside. Her house was not the biggest place around, and it seemed even smaller with so many children squeezed inside. Small and surprisingly quiet. All the shouting and laughter that had been going on outside earlier had stopped. The wind was howling now, and the house was starting to shake. We were scared. Even Aunt Seneva was scared. And then it got worse. Now the house was beginning to sway. The wood plank flooring beneath us began to bend. And then a corner of the house started lifting up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. None of us could. This storm was actually pulling the house toward the sky, with us inside it. That was when Aunt Seneva told us to clasp hands. "Line up and hold hands," she said, and we did as we were told. Then she had us walk as a group toward the corner of the room that was rising. From the kitchen to the front of the house we walked, the wind screaming outside, sheets of rain beating on the tin roof. Then we walked back in the other direction as another end of the house began to lift. And so it went, back and forth. 15 small children walking with the wind, holding that trembling house down with the weight of our small bodies. Can you imagine what it was like to be inside of that house? Afraid that it might fall all apart from the destructive force of the wind and the rain, from the whole storm? Well, I'm glad that John Lewis wasn't alone, that he was there with friends and family, and I'm glad that they figured out a way to work together. When John Lewis was much older and was writing down the story of his whole astounding life, he wrote these words: "More than half a century has passed since that day, and it has struck me more than once over those many years that our society is not unlike the children in that house, rocked again and again by the winds of one storm or another, the walls around us seeming at times as if they might fly apart. It seemed that way in the 1960s at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, when America itself felt as if it might burst at the seams. So much tension, so many storms. But the people of conscience never left the house. They never ran away. They stayed. They came together, they did the best they could, clasping hands and moving toward the corner of the house that was the weakest. And then another corner would lift, and we would go there. And eventually, inevitably, the storm would settle, and the house would still stand. But we knew another storm would come, and we would have to do it all over again. And we did. And we still do, all of us, you and I. Children holding hands, walking with the wind. Thank you for listening to not my story, but Mr. John Lewis's story.
Thank you, Karen. And now we're at the time that we set aside for the offertory in order to give towards the financial vitality of this community. 25% of the weekly collection each week goes to an organization in our local community. And for July, we are partnering with Clemson Community Care for that 25%. For those of you at home, you can go to the UUFC website and use the donate button, and there you will see options for paying your pledge and donating towards organizations that we partner with. And thank you all for your generosity. And since we don't have, we have a couple of children here, but we also collect canned goods. Our children collect canned goods that we also donate to the food bank. Children of all ages are now helping with the food donations as well. So thank you. The journey of life brings pleasures and pains, satisfactions and regrets. As persons who are seeking truth and meaning in our everyday task, one is to honor such experiences as well as to integrate them. We fit the pieces together, and in doing so, find the larger shape of our lives that we're reaching towards. Part of this process is making meaning of of making meaning can be the ritual of joys and concerns, which is where we now turn. The stones that Reverend Gale will be placing in the bowl are smooth and they have weight. They're indicative of both life's pleasures and times of ease, as well as life's burdens and times of heaviness. So our first stone will be for welcoming our visitors. Do we have any visitors today that would like to introduce themselves if you're comfortable doing so? Well, Reverend Gale, I'll introduce. Any others? Well, come on, please stand.
They will stand up.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Allison Hayes. This is my third visit here, so thank you for welcoming me.
Welcome. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nathan, and this is my wife Annie and our son Johnny, and this is our first time here.
Welcome. Glad to have you. Hi.
Ashton, and it's my first time here.
Welcome, Ashton. Thank you. And then some of the other joys and concerns that were submitted here. Kathy Crane sends her greetings from Atlanta. She's attending the Abundant Love Fellowship with her son Daniel this weekend and sends her greetings to us. I'm going to have to get my little cheater readers out here. This one is from Martha Alexander. That's a joy. Jim Alexander will celebrate his 86th birthday on Monday, July 17th. All right, congratulations, Jim. Here's a note from Day. 2023's August is the 20-year mark of an on-the-job accident that ended my partner's career and nearly her life. We ask that good vibes be sent our way while we are finalizing old sorrow into current joy. Thank you, Day. And this last one is a joy from Paula Heusingfeld. I am healing well and transitioning from a wheelchair to a walker. Many thanks to those who shared and provided meals for us. It was a blessing. Thanks. And then we add one final stone for those concerns that are held silently in our hearts and not shared. Thank you. And now I'll introduce Reverend Gale Baldwin. Reverend Gale, and she'll come up after the prayer and meditation in a few moments, but I'll take the moment now to make the introduction. Reverend Gale Baldwin was born in Orangeburg, South Carolina. At age 18, she went directly to Brazil for a year in student familiarization course, housed in the Colégio de Novembre School in Garanhuns, Brazil. I think I pronounced it halfway right. As a sheltered Southern girl, this year in Brazil was quite a life-changing break. Upon returning in 1965, America was never the same. It was the beginning of a quest to know. And in that quest to knowing, she holds the following degrees: a Bachelor of Music from St. Andrews University, a Master of Arts in English, Poetry from University of the Americas in Mexico, a Master of Divinity from the Episcopal Seminary of the Southwest, a PhD in Philosophy and Religion from Marquette University, and an MFA in Fiction from the Vermont College of Fine Arts, and I could not do that in one breath. I tried. She served as a minister in the parishes of South Carolina, Wyoming, Milwaukee, and North Dakota, and did a lot of ecumenical work, as well as advocacy and roundtables for the LGBTQI community. Later, after over a decade of teaching in the Philosophy and Religion department at the University of North Dakota, she retired with her spouse and 2 labs in the state she vowed to never return to. With their 2 labs, they have lived in the Seneca and Clemson area for several years, and I am proud to call Gail my neighbor. When she discovered that there were 3 African-American professors at Clemson, she returned for yet another degree in English, earning a Master's of Arts in Fiction and Advanced Study in Global Black Studies. She is now developing a full-time career in writing. She also studies classical and jazz piano and voice at Clemson. So After our meditation, we'll have the honor to hear Reverend Gail give our sermon. And as part of our prayer and meditation moment, today we're contemplating how to bring about the beloved community, as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and Mr. John Lewis and so many others have invited us to become a part of. The beloved community is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. King said, "This is the love that may well be the salvation of our civilization. But the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community." In this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. I offer this song to you as an invitation to all of us to imagine and bring about the beloved community here today. Ben, come on. Should be on. Oh. Yeah, no. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Okay. I'm not sure that this microphone up here works without this one, so I'm going to check it out. If I turn it off, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so I don't need it. I just wanted to be sure because there are people in the back that I'm not really sure can hear me, and I like to be sure I'm heard. And so, I mean, you know, you get a chance to talk to people, and they might say something back in the middle of it, but most of the time they won't until later. I want to thank you for letting me be here in the midst of a time that's very disturbing to me and probably unnerving to a lot of you. And so I'm going to begin. There's a reading. Where is that? In here somewhere? From James Baldwin. James Baldwin happens to be someone who's inspired me, who has never been, thank you. He's always contemporary. As he said to one little kid once, a writer is never appreciated till he dies. And so from his essay collection, The Price of a Ticket, if you've never read it, I say it's a thick book. If you can get through it, it's worth it. He writes, the price the white American paid for his ticket was to become white. And in the main, nothing more than that. Or, as he was to insist, nothing less. This incredibly limited, not to say dim-witted ambition, good old Baldwin, has choked many a human being to death here. And this, I contend, is because the white American has never accepted the real reasons for his journey. I know very well, Baldwin says, that my ancestors had no desire to come to this place. But neither did the ancestors of the people who became white and who require my captivity a song. They require of me a song less to celebrate my captivity than to justify their own. When I was a little kid in Orangeburg, I was carefully taught, or they tried to, how to become a racist. For one thing, we had 2 universities in our town, Orangeburg. I never heard one lecture from anyone there. Never met a professional doctor, lecturer, teacher. I was raised in a small little space, carefully guarded, but I was a rebel. I was lucky enough to have 2 families. And one was an African-American family who taught me a lot as I went in and out of their house. So one of the things that I would say, the PhDs, the MAs, the degrees mean nothing. In fact, PhD means pile higher and deeper. What has meant the most to me is the lessons I have learned from my other family, my colleagues who have taught with me. Because the one thing white people need to know is shut up and listen. We're not good at that. I'm going to read this to you to introduce myself as you want an identity from me. So here you go. From Kizé Lemon. I don't know if you've read any of his stuff, but he has an essay, How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America. And I'm using his words because I so resonated with him. I want to say and mean that remembering starts not with predictable punditry or bullshit blogs, excuse my language, but it's going to happen, or slick art that really asks nothing of us. I want to say that it starts with all of us willing ourselves to remember, tell and accept those complicated, muffled truths of our lives and the deaths and the lives and the deaths of folks all around us over and over again. As Baldwin said once in an interview that was hidden by ABC, I have rage. And white people don't like to see black people in rage. But I have rage because at 7 years old, growing up in Harlem, I looked at little kids and I went, where are they going to go? And he said, here I am 40 years later, and nothing's changed. That was in 1970. 23 years later, things have changed, but it's a pushback on progress. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I know you understand what I'm saying, but it's uncomfortable. Layman goes on and says, I want to say and mean that I am who my grandma thinks I am, but I'm not. I'm a walking regret, a truth teller, a liar, a survivor, a frowning ellipsis, a witness, a dreamer, a teacher, a student, a joker, a writer whose eyes stay red, and I am a child of this nation. About identity, I don't know who I am at this point. That's me speaking at this point. I know that there's confusion about pronouns. There's a reason for that. Because patriarchy has tried to set us into some categories. This is a wonderful white thing. You know, if you have to name it. Name it means you control it. So to choose your own pronoun is giving you options. But I can't fit in there. Like I'm a she sometime, a he sometime, a they sometime. I'm all of those things because I'm a writer. And I let the characters teach me their story. I kind of go back to the greatest line in the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures anyway, when Isaac was wrestling with the angel of God. He said, tell me your name. What does God say? I am who I am. I went, I just love that. So why am I here? Forget all those degrees, forget all that stuff. I'm here because I was invited, but also you put a resolve in your principles. Number 8. I'm here to strengthen number 8, which was to overcome the racist systems that run our world and that we, as white people, are privileged to benefit from. Now, the question is always for us, what do we do about it? Right? What do we do about it? Well, I know that for me as a writer, I'm doing one thing, and maybe this would encourage you. And this is in response to a word that's been hijacked from the African American community. That's nothing new. White people do that all the time. And that is woke. And now it's wokeness. Wokeness. Now it's a thing. To be woke for some people is the worst sin you could commit. Remember this little phrase, sticks and bricks can break my bones, but words can never harm me. You know a white person made that up. Has to be. We're good at making up rhymes, taking words from someone else and turning them into our own benefit. Woke, from what I understand from my experience with the Black American community, is I see what's going on here. I get it. So in the height of irony, that wokeness is now not knowing what's going on. From the side that doesn't know what's going on. I see what's going on here. A Black American put at that back of the line, although they were first. The first to be fired, the longest to be jailed, A black American moving into town, say our town, looking for a house to purchase, a bank loan, a physician who will treat them well. We never think about that. To be woke is to know what's going on, to always like check things out. And sometimes it's a matter of life and death. Now let's talk about sin a minute, because sin is not ever used, probably Unitarians don't use that word, but you know what? Sin means separation from, cutting myself off from, calling somebody an other, and then I don't have to deal with them, or I can be a category. And here's what I would challenge this congregation to do. You want to do Principle 8? Take some risk. Here's an example. I went into the gym down here. I go to this gym, Max Fitness thing, trying to continue to stay vertical. And I go in, and here's a pretty big, very dark black guy coming in with a hoodie. And I see people looking around, you know, going like, that's so weird. He comes and sits on the bike, and I'm usually on the bike next to him. I'm usually on that bike, but I'd never seen him before. So I get on the bike like I usually do. Finally, I said, hey, my name is Gail. He looked at me like, somebody talk to me. He introduced himself, and we started really enjoying our conversation, you know, and we talked about the state of the world, and he said, at the end, he said, you know what? These are the kind of conversations that will change us. And so the challenge to us as the white privileged community is it's our time to be uncomfortable. And I know everybody has their own little circle of friends, and I say, just look for opportunities. If you're open, they will come. Opportunities to basically tell me your story, not see where you land politically, none of that stuff. Just say, who are you? What's your story? And then, of course, listen. Now, the spiritual tradition is all about being woke, you know. Example, stay awake at all times. That's from Luke. The hour has come for you to wake from sleep. That's from Romans. From the Hebrew scriptures, there's another one. Those who are asleep will never be found. Hinduism. When a sleeper wakes up, the person gets up, goes through the morning routine, but when a seeker of the truth is awakened, he uses intellect, truth, and becomes transformed. It is a metamorphosis, like from a caterpillar waking up to a butterfly. So when there's an awakening, you become enlightened. You don't see things the same. You don't see me, you other, me up before you. We see a human being like me. What's your story? What's your story? Now, I want to say that it's painful. Dr. Thomas, who is head of the Call My Name project over at Clemson, she's my mentor. I started writing for her, that's been years ago, but she wants me to develop a project I started that is a memoir of how I was raised to be racist in this state. Because she says, I have white students in the class. I can't talk about that. She wants to use it in there. Well, I said, okay, I'll do that. You know, that's a lot painful, more painful than I thought. Because memories come up that I'd forgotten. Lessons to be carefully taught. And how it didn't make any sense to me. For example, I was supposed to read Poor Little Hannibal, which is about this little black kid, you know, and he never can get anything right, and he's lazy and all that. She goes, what's the lesson? This is like I'm 8. I said, I don't know. She goes, black people are lazy. I'm not telling you the word she used. I went, that didn't make any sense to me. Everywhere I looked in Orangeburg, South Carolina, every black person I saw was working their butts off. I said, why are you telling me this? Doesn't make any sense to me. Then I'd go over to my other family and have to laugh. Between white church and black church, there's a big difference. Between white parties and black parties, there's a big difference. When we were doing that song, I had to laugh. You know, it's like, you don't move too much. I went over to Seneca one time, and they had a jazz on the alley. And I just had to laugh. You know, they're like doing a line dance. But there were no black people showing them how to do this right. So it's like from the waist up. Like, move those feet, right? But I just was really laughing. I went like, it's so beautiful that we're all different. But if we're all beloved community, we can just laugh at each other, laugh with each other, have fun with each other, enjoy food together. What's the problem with that? Well, the problem is we have to give up our privilege to make room for the beloved community. That's up to us. That is no longer up to anybody else but us. So I guess the last thing to say is that I could go on, but I won't. I could tell you lots of stories, but I won't do that. We'll talk each other. Cross those boundaries and become uncomfortable. And then listen. Don't interpret, listen. You don't even have to say anything back. Just listen. I entitled this thing I'm doing, this memoir, Reluctant Excavations. And I call all of the community, maybe to start there. What are the excavations I need to do to remember? Toni Morrison said, remember means putting a broken member back to where it was. So until we remember, we will still be broken. As a community, as a nation. And I'm not going to settle for that. And I hope you don't either. Wake up. Wake up. I'm glad to be woke. I'm getting woker. Recovery, you're either recovering from this horrible thing or you're still there. So let's all be woke together. Wake up and strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have not found your works complete. That's from Revelation. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Reverend Gale. And let us rise in body and spirit as we sing together hymn 1035, and there'll be a video along with it that we can sing along with. So, and a brief word about this song before we start. It's in the teal hymnal if you want. This is a chant from the apartheid revolution in South Africa that has now expanded to become a worldwide song that heralds freedom and justice for all.
Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming. Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming. Oh freedom, freedom, oh freedom, freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming. Oh yes, oh freedom, freedom, oh freedom, freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Oh yes, I know. Oh yes, I know. Yes, I know. Oh yes, I know. Oh, freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. 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 Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. 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 Oh, freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Oh yes, I know. Oh yes, I know. Oh, freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Oh, free.
Let me say one more thing, that let's see how I put this. The next thing is to ask, you see this lovely space you have in here? How do we reach out to others in this community and use this space together? Just a challenge to you, to connect, to ask the stories, to have a safe place to do that. I'd love that. I'd love that. You want together to do closing words? Oh, you don't have that. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted all to say this, but I will read it and I'll leave it. And if you want to use it in another service, you might like that. From the Dalai Lama. May I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector for those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. And one more thing about the Freedom Song. There's a wonderful character in Angels in America. I don't know if you saw that play. The nurse there, who was African American, said, "Isn't it interesting that the highest note in the Star Spangled Banner, national anthem, most people can't reach it. It's free. Go in peace, return in love. Amen."
sponsored by 4-H. That's what blew everybody's mind. Would you like to stand?